Stop asking about your father's property. My mother's voice cut through the kitchen like a knife, her hands slamming the counter so hard the coffee mugs rattled. I froze mid-sentence, the question dying on my lips. I'm Natalie Hayes, and I'm 26 years old. For 3 years, I'd been asking the same question. What happened to the house Dad left me in Boulder? The 2-bedroom Craftsman he'd bought in 1998, the one he'd promised would be mine someday. My mother, Diane, stood there with her arms crossed, her face red with anger I didn't understand. Behind her, my stepfather Roger smirked from the doorway. That smirk told me everything. Something was very wrong. My eyes drifted to the kitchen table, where a manila folder sat half open. I could see the edge of a document, official-looking with a county seal. Before I could ask what it was, Diane snatched it away. This conversation is over, Natalie. You need to let go of the past and move on with your life. But I couldn't let go. Not when my gut screamed that I was being lied to. That afternoon, I made a decision. If my mother wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find someone who would. Mrs. Calloway had lived across the street from my parents for 32 years. She was 74, sharp as a tack, and saw everything that happened on Maple Drive. I knocked on her door at 3 p.m., my hands shaking. She opened it wearing her usual cardigan, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. Natalie, dear, come in. We sat in her living room, surrounded by decades of memories. Photos of her late husband, knitted Afghans, the smell of Earl Grey tea. Mrs. Calloway, I need to ask you about my father's house, the one on Summit Road. Her face changed instantly. The warmth drained away, replaced by something that looked like pity. Oh, sweetheart, you don't know, do you? My stomach dropped. Know what? She set down her teacup carefully. Your mother sold that house 2 years ago. She and Roger transferred the deed. They got $340 for it. The number hit me like a punch. $340,000. Gone. But it was supposed to be mine, Dad's will said. I know what your father wanted. Mrs. Calloway's voice was gentle but firm. I was there when he talked about it. He wanted you to have that house. My hands were shaking now. Where did the money go? Mrs. Calloway hesitated, then stood and walked to her desk. She pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed before. I've been keeping track, she said quietly. After your father passed, I saw things that didn't sit right. She handed me the folder. Inside were printed copies of public records, property transfers, tax documents, county filings, all official, all legal, all showing that my mother and Roger had quietly dismantled everything my father had built. The house sale went through 18 months ago, Mrs. Calloway explained. The money was deposited into an account Roger controls. Then 6 months later, they purchased a vacation condo in Vail, cash payment, $285,000. I stared at the documents. My inheritance, my father's gift, had become Roger's ski getaway. How did you get all this? Public records, dear. Anyone can access them if they know where to look. She sat down beside me. Your mother told the neighbors you'd agreed to the sale, that you wanted nothing to do with the property because it reminded you of your father. A lie. A complete fabrication. I'd never said anything like that. What else? I asked, my voice barely steady. Mrs. Calloway's expression darkened. There's more. Much more. I went home in a daze, the folder tucked under my arm. Diane wasn't there. Roger's truck was gone too. The house felt empty, hollow. I sat at the kitchen table and spread out the documents Mrs. Calloway had given me. Property deed showing the transfer from Andrew Hayes, deceased, to Diane Hayes and Roger Crawford. Date March 15th, 2 years ago. I'd been working in Denver at the time, living in a small apartment, struggling with my father's death and my first real job. I hadn't even known the sale was happening. Tax records showed the $340,000 deposit. Then another document, the Vail condo purchase. Roger's name only. Not even my mother's name on that deed. I pulled out my laptop and started searching public databases. Mrs. Calloway had shown me how. Property records, court filings, business registrations. Everything was public if you knew where to look. That's when I found it. A trust fund established by Andrew Hayes in 2005. Beneficiary, Natalie Hayes. Amount, $50,000 untouched, sitting in a bank account at First Colorado Bank. My mother had never mentioned it. Not once in 21 years. The betrayal wasn't just the house. It was systematic, calculated, complete. Roger came home first. I heard his truck pull into the driveway, heard his heavy footsteps on the porch. I'd hidden the documents in my room by then, but I couldn't hide the anger on my face. "Where's the house?" I asked the moment he walked through the door. He stopped, keys in hand. "What house?" "Dad's house. The one on Summit Road, the one that was supposed to be mine." Roger's face hardened. "That house was your mother's, to do with as she pleased. Your father left everything to her." "That's a lie. Watch your tone." His voice dropped, dangerous. "You're a guest in this house, Natalie. Don't forget that. I'm her daughter." "You're 26 years old. Time to grow up and stop living in the past." He walked past me toward the stairs. I followed. "You sold it for $340,000. Then you bought a condo in Vail. Where's my money?" Roger spun around so fast I stepped back. "Your money? You entitled little—" The front door opened. Diane walked in, saw us on the stairs, and her expression went cold. "What's going on?" "Your daughter is making accusations," Roger said. Diane looked at me. "Natalie, we need to talk." The talk was Diane's version of rewriting history. We sat in the living room. Roger stood by the fireplace like a sentinel. My mother folded her hands in her lap, her voice calm and reasonable. "Your father did leave the house to me, Natalie. The will was very clear. I was the executor of the estate, and I had the legal right to sell any property as I saw fit. But he told me it would be mine. He told you a lot of things when you were young. That doesn't make them legally binding." The gaslighting was so smooth I almost believed her. Almost. "What about the trust fund?" Diane's eye twitched. "Just a fraction, but I saw it. What trust fund?" "The one Dad set up in 2005. $50,000. My name is on it." Silence. Roger and Diane exchanged a look. "That money was used for your education," Diane said finally. "College expenses. You went to Boulder, remember? That wasn't free." "I paid for college with loans. I'm still paying them off." "Well, the trust helped with some expenses." Another lie. "I'd checked my loan documents before coming downstairs. Every penny of my education had been financed through federal and private loans. The trust had never been touched." "I want to see the records," I said. "Excuse me?" "Bank statements. Proof that the trust was used for my education. If you spent it on me, there should be documentation." Diane stood up. "This conversation is over." "You're being disrespectful and ungrateful." I stood too. "I'm being robbed." I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every confrontation, every lie. I kept a notebook in my car, writing down dates, times, exact words spoken. Mrs. Calloway became my unofficial advisor. She'd been a paralegal before retiring, and she knew how to navigate legal systems. "You need copies of everything," she told me over tea one afternoon. "The will, the trust documents, the property sale records, everything." "How do I get Dad's will?" "Probate court. It's public record once it's been filed." The Boulder County Probate Court was downtown. I went the next day during my lunch break. The clerk was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who barely looked up when I approached. "I need a copy of a will. Andrew Hayes died April 2021. She typed into her computer. "Case number?" I didn't have it. She sighed but searched by name instead. "Found it. That'll be $2 per page, and this one is 12 pages, $24. I paid in cash. She printed the copies and handed them to me in a manila envelope. I didn't open it until I was back in my car. My hands shook as I pulled out the pages. Last will and testament of Andrew Hayes. I skipped to the relevant section. "I leave my house at 447 Summit Road, Boulder, Colorado, to my wife, Diane Hayes, to manage as she sees fit for the benefit of our daughter, Natalie Hayes, until such time as Natalie turns 25, at which point the property shall be transferred to her name. For the benefit of, not to keep, not to sell, to manage for my benefit." Armed with the will, I confronted Diane again. This time I had Roger's sister Vanessa there too. She'd come for Sunday dinner, all smiles and false warmth. Vanessa was 32, blonde, and worked in her father's construction business. Her younger brother, Connor, 28, showed up an hour later. The whole happy family gathered around Diane's table. I waited until dessert. I got a copy of Dad's will. Diane's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Why would you do that?" "Because you lied to me." I pulled out the pages. "The house wasn't yours to sell. It was supposed to be managed for my benefit until I turned 25. I turned 25 18 months ago, right around the time you sold it." Vanessa looked confused. "What house?" "My father's house, the one on Summit Road." Roger cleared his throat. Your father left that property to your mother, Natalie. She had every right to manage it for my benefit, not sell it and buy you a condo in Vale. Connor's eyes widened. You bought a place in Vale? Roger's face went red. That's none of your business. It's my business when it's bought with my inheritance. Diane stood up. You're causing a scene. Good. Maybe someone here will finally tell me the truth. Vanessa looked at her father. Dad, did you buy a condo with Natalie's money? It's complicated, Roger started. I cut him off. It's theft! After that dinner, everything changed. Vanessa called me the next day. Is it true? About the condo? Yes. Public records show the sale and purchase. My dad told us you didn't want anything to do with the property, that you'd signed it over willingly. Another lie. They'd built an entire narrative to justify their theft. I never signed anything, Vanessa. I didn't even know about the sale until last week. She was quiet for a long moment. Connor and I thought it was weird. Dad doesn't have that kind of money normally. But he said he'd gotten a bonus from a big contract. He got $340,000 from selling my father's house. Jesus, Vanessa sighed. Look, I don't know what to tell you. That's between you and them. But for what it's worth, I believe you. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in Roger's perfect facade. That night, I went back to Mrs. Calloway's house. She had something new for me. I made some calls, she said, handing me another folder. Your father had a lawyer. His name is Thomas Patterson. He still practices in Boulder. I called his office and explained the situation. He remembers your father. My heart raced. What did he say? He wants to meet with you. Tomorrow, if you're available. I looked at the business card she'd included. Thomas Patterson, attorney at law. My father's lawyer. Someone who knew what Dad actually wanted. Thomas Patterson's office was on Pearl Street, above a coffee shop. He was in his 60s. Gray hair, kind eyes. When I walked in, he stood and shook my hand firmly. Natalie, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man. We sat down and I showed him everything. The will, the property sale records, the Vale condo purchase, the untouched trust fund. He read through it all carefully, making notes on a legal pad. This is clear, he said finally. The will stipulated that the property was to be managed for your benefit until you turned 25. At that point, it should have been transferred to you. Can we get it back? The property itself? No, it's been sold to a third party. But the proceeds? Absolutely. Your mother had a fiduciary duty to act in your best interest. Selling the property and using the money for her husband's personal benefit is a clear breach of that duty. He leaned back in his chair. We can file a claim for the full amount, plus damages. $340,000, plus interest, plus legal fees. The number took my breath away. Will she fight it? Probably. But the law is on your side. He paused. There's something else. The trust fund you mentioned. I helped your father set that up. It was supposed to be released to you when you turned 21. Did you ever receive notification from the bank? No. I only found out about it through public records. Thomas's expression darkened. That's another breach. Someone should have notified you when you reached majority age. I left Thomas's office with a plan. We'd file a formal claim against Diane and Roger for the property sale proceeds. We'd also investigate the trust fund and why I'd never been notified. But Thomas warned me, this will get ugly. Family lawsuits always do. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my father, about the promises he'd made, the future he'd tried to give me. Yes, I'm ready. The first step was gathering more evidence. Thomas recommended a forensic accountant, a woman named Laura Chen. Wait, no, that's a band name. Let me use Laura Bennett instead. Laura Bennett specialized in tracking financial fraud. She was expensive, but Thomas said she was worth it. If your mother and stepfather have been mismanaging your father's estate, Laura will find it. Laura met with me at a neutral location, a library study room. She was in her 40s, professional, efficient. I gave her access to every document I had. This will take about 2 weeks, she said. I'll need to subpoena some bank records, but with the will showing fiduciary duty, we should be able to get a judge to approve it. 2 weeks felt like forever, but I waited. In the meantime, I went back to Mrs. Calloway. Is there anything else you haven't told me? She smiled sadly. Actually, yes. Your father kept a safety deposit box at First Colorado Bank. He mentioned it once when we were talking about estate planning. He said there were documents there for you, things he wanted you to have. The safety deposit box. I'd completely forgotten about it. I called the bank the next morning. This is Natalie Hayes. My father, Andrew Hayes, had a safety deposit box with you. He passed away in 2021. How do I access it? The representative put me on hold. When she came back, her voice was apologetic. Miss Hayes, that box was accessed in June 2021, 2 months after your father's death. It was emptied by Diane Hayes, who was listed as co-owner. My stomach dropped. Do you have records of what was in it? No, ma'am. We don't track contents, only access. Another dead end. But it confirmed something important. Diane had systematically gone through my father's affairs, taking everything before I even knew to look. I called Thomas and told him. That's fine, he said. It actually helps our case. It shows a pattern of behavior. She accessed the box immediately, sold the house as soon as you turned 25, and never notified you about the trust. This isn't ignorance. This is deliberate. 2 weeks later, Laura Bennett called. I've got something. Can you come to my office? I drove there immediately. She had spreadsheets covering her desk. Your mother and stepfather have been very busy, Laura said, turning her computer screen toward me. The house sale was just the beginning. She walked me through it. The $340,000 from the house. $285,000 went to the Vale condo. The remaining $55,000 was split, $30,000 into a joint account Diane and Roger shared, and $20,000 to pay off Roger's truck loan. But here's where it gets interesting, Laura continued. The trust fund. $50,000, untouched like you said. But there's another account. A life insurance policy your father had. $100,000 paid out upon death, beneficiary listed as Natalie Hayes. I stared at Laura's screen. Life insurance? I never received any life insurance money. Because someone filed a beneficiary change form 3 months before your father died, the beneficiary was changed from Natalie Hayes to Diane Hayes. My mouth went dry. Can they do that? Not without your father's signature. And here's the thing. Your father was in hospice care those last 3 months. Stage 4 cancer, heavily medicated. I checked the medical records. He was barely conscious most days. Laura pulled up another document. The signature on the beneficiary change form doesn't match your father's signature on earlier documents. It's close, but not exact. I think someone forged it. Diane, my mother had forged my father's signature to steal my life insurance money. That's fraud, I whispered. Yes, and it's prosecutable. Laura leaned back. Between the house, the trust fund, and the life insurance, you're owed approximately $490,000. Plus interest and damages, we're looking at over $500,000. The number was staggering. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in student loans, while my mother and Roger lived off my inheritance. What do? We file everything. Civil suit for the money. And I'm recommending we report the insurance fraud to the State Attorney General's office. This crosses the line from family dispute into criminal territory. Thomas agreed when I called him. Natalie, this is serious. Are you absolutely sure you want to pursue criminal charges against your mother? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes. Filing the lawsuit was surprisingly simple. Thomas handled most of it, but I had to sign the complaint. Diane Hayes and Roger Crawford, defendants. Natalie Hayes, plaintiff. Allegations, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of assets, fraud, forgery. The sheriff delivered the papers to Diane's house on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there, but Mrs. Calloway was watching from her window. She called me immediately. Your mother came out screaming. She was waving the papers in the air, yelling about betrayal. And how could you do this to family? How did Roger react? He tried to calm her down, but he looked scared, really scared. Good. They should be scared. The Attorney General's office moved slower. They had to investigate the insurance fraud claim, verify the signature analysis, build their case. But they were interested, very interested. Insurance fraud is taken seriously in Colorado, the investigator told me during our initial meeting. If we can prove forgery, that's a felony. Your mother could face prison time. Prison. My mother in prison. The thought should have made me feel something. Guilt, maybe, or sadness. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. She'd stolen from me, lied to me, erased my father's wishes. She deserved consequences. A week after the lawsuit was filed, Diane called me. I let it go to voicemail. Natalie, please, we need to talk about this lawsuit. You don't understand what you're doing. Call me back. I deleted the message. 2 days later, she tried again. This time I answered, What? Natalie, please drop this. You're tearing the family apart. You tore the family apart when you stole from me. I didn't steal. I managed the estate as I saw fit. That's what your father wanted. That's a lie, and you know it. She started crying. Please, honey, Roger and I can work something out. We can give you some money. All of it. You'll give me all of it with interest. We don't have that kind of money anymore. Then you should have thought about that before you spent my inheritance on a ski condo. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Thomas recommended I move out of Diane's house. This is going to get nastier before it gets better. You don't want to be under the same roof. He was right. I found a small studio apartment in Boulder, $950 a month. It was tight, but it was mine. I moved out on a Saturday while Diane and Roger were at some event. I didn't leave a note. They'd figure it out. Mrs. Calloway helped me move. She was surprisingly strong for 74, carrying boxes up the stairs with determination. Your father would be proud of you, she said as we unpacked my kitchen. You think so? I know so. He loved you very much, Natalie. He wanted you taken care of. I felt tears building, but pushed them down. I wish he'd made it clearer in the will. He thought he did. He trusted your mother to do the right thing. She shook her head. That was his mistake, but it's not yours. That night, alone in my new apartment, I finally let myself cry. For my father, for the inheritance stolen, for the family I'd lost, but also for the strength I'd found, the truth I'd uncovered. I wasn't the helpless girl Diane had counted on. I was my father's daughter, and I was going to win. The hearing came faster than I expected. Thomas, Laura, and I sat on one side of the courtroom. Diane, Roger, and their lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Peter Walsh, sat on the other. The judge was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. Judge Barbara Reynolds. She read through the complaint, her expression neutral. Miss Hayes, you're alleging that your mother breached her fiduciary duty and committed fraud? Yes, Your Honor. And you have evidence? Thomas stood. Substantial evidence, Your Honor. We have the will, property records, bank statements, and expert testimony regarding signature forgery. Judge Reynolds turned to Diane's lawyer. Mr. Walsh? He stood, fumbling with papers. Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding between family members. My client acted in good faith as executor of the estate. Any discrepancies can be explained. Then explain the life insurance beneficiary change, Thomas interrupted. Explain how a dying man in hospice care, barely conscious, supposedly signed a form changing his daughter's $100,000 benefit to his wife. Mr. Walsh had no good answer. He stammered something about reviewing the documents and getting clarity on the timeline. Judge Reynolds was not impressed. I'm granting a preliminary injunction, she said. All remaining assets from Andrew Hayes' estate are to be frozen pending investigation. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Crawford, you are not to sell, transfer, or otherwise dispose of any property or funds that originated from the deceased's estate. Diane gasped. Roger's face went red. Your Honor, that's our home, our savings. Should have been preserved for the rightful beneficiary. Judge Reynolds cut him off. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a full hearing. Both parties will present their evidence at that time. She banged her gavel. Court adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Diane tried to approach me. Thomas stepped between us. Mrs. Hayes, I strongly advise you not to contact my client. She's my daughter. She's my client. Any communication goes through me. Roger grabbed Diane's arm and pulled her away. She looked back at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Good. Let her be scared. Let her understand what she'd done. That evening, Vanessa called me. I heard about the hearing. Let me guess, Roger's version? Yeah. He said you're trying to steal from them, that you're making up lies about the estate. I laughed bitterly. Of course he did. What do you think? I think my dad's been lying to me for a long time. Her voice was quiet. Connor and I went through some old papers. We found the Vale condo deed. Dad's name is the only one on it. Not even your mom's. Because it's not their money. It's mine. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. She paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I believed him when he said you were okay with selling the house. I should have asked you directly." It wasn't much, but it was something. Another crack in their fortress. The 30 days before the full hearing crawled by. Thomas and Laura worked around the clock, building our case. I went to work, came home to my tiny apartment, and tried not to think about what was coming, but I couldn't stop. Every night I'd pull out the documents, reviewing everything. The will, the property records, the forged insurance form. Laura had hired a handwriting expert who confirmed what we already knew. The signature on the beneficiary change didn't match my father's. It was close, but the angle of the letters was wrong. The pressure points were different. "This was done by someone who had access to your father's signature," the expert testified in her report. "Likely someone who'd seen him sign documents before and could approximate his style. But it's not authentic." We had everything. Evidence, expert testimony, a clear timeline of theft and fraud. The only thing we didn't have was remorse from Diane. She called me twice more before the hearing, leaving voicemails that oscillated between pleading and threatening. "Natalie, please, I'm your mother. How can you do this to me?" And then, hours later, "You ungrateful brat, after everything I've done for you, your father would be ashamed." I saved every voicemail. Thomas said they'd be useful to show her state of mind. The day before the hearing, Mrs. Calloway invited me over for tea. "However this goes tomorrow," she said, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. You stood up for yourself. That takes courage." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Good. You should be. But you're also right. And that matters more than being scared." The courtroom was packed for the full hearing. Word had spread somehow, probably through Mrs. Calloway's network of neighbors and friends. People who'd known my father, who'd watched me grow up, who'd seen Diane and Roger's extravagant lifestyle, wondered where the money came from. Judge Reynolds called the court to order. "We're here for the matter of Hayes versus Hayes and Crawford. Counselor, you may begin." Thomas stood. He was calm, professional, devastating. He walked the judge through everything. The will, which clearly stated the property was to be managed for my benefit. The property sale records, showing it was sold when I turned 25 and the money was funneled to Roger's condo. The trust fund I'd never been told about. The life insurance policy with the forged beneficiary change. Laura testified, explaining the financial trail. The handwriting expert testified, explaining why the signature was fake. Mrs. Calloway testified, explaining what my father had told her about his wishes for the property. Then it was Diane's turn to testify. She took the stand in a navy dress, her makeup perfect, her hands folded. She looked like the grieving widow. She was good at that. Mr. Walsh led her through her version of events. How she'd managed the estate to the best of her ability. How she'd tried to do right by both Andrew's memory and Natalie's future. How selling the house had been a practical decision. Thomas destroyed her on cross-examination. "Mrs. Hayes, did you tell Natalie about the property sale before it happened?" I don't recall." "You don't recall telling your daughter you were selling her inheritance?" "It was my property to manage. For her benefit. Did you give her the proceeds?" Silence. "Mrs. Hayes, the money was used for family expenses." "Family expenses?" "Like a $285,000 ski condo in your husband's name only." Her lawyer objected. Judge Reynolds overruled. "Mrs. Hayes, did you or did you not use the proceeds from the property sale to purchase a vacation home?" Diane's composure cracked. Roger and I needed somewhere she trailed off. Thomas didn't let up. "And the life insurance policy? The one with your daughter as beneficiary?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't know about the $100,000 policy Andrew Hayes had, listing Natalie as beneficiary? The one that mysteriously changed to list you as beneficiary 3 months before he died?" "Andrew must have changed it himself." "Andrew was in hospice care, Mrs. Hayes. He was barely conscious." Thomas held up the expert report. "This signature is a forgery. Did you forge your dying husband's signature to steal from your daughter?" Diane broke down on the stand. "I didn't mean, it wasn't supposed to be like this. I just needed the money. Roger had debts, and I couldn't." She was sobbing now, makeup running. "I was going to pay her back. I was going to make it right." Judge Reynolds' expression was stone. "Step down, Mrs. Hayes. Roger didn't testify. His lawyer advised against it. Smart move because we had him cornered on the property transfer alone. The judge took a 15-minute recess. When she came back, her decision was swift and final. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Natalie Hayes. The defendants, Diane Hayes and Roger Crawford, are ordered to pay $340,000 for the property sale proceeds, $100,000 for the life insurance policy, $50,000 for the trust fund that should have been released, and $75,000 in damages and legal fees. Total $565,000 due within 90 days. Diane gasped. Roger's face went white. $565? We don't have that kind of money. Then you'll sell the Vale condo, Judge Reynolds said flatly. And if that's not enough, you'll find a way. Because this is money you stole from the plaintiff, and she will be made whole. The gavel came down. Furthermore, I'm recommending this case to the district attorney's office for review regarding the insurance fraud. Mrs. Hayes, you may be facing criminal charges. The courtroom erupted. People were talking, gasping, some even applauding. I sat there in shock, barely processing what had just happened. Thomas squeezed my shoulder. You did it. You won. I looked across the courtroom at Diane and Roger. They were surrounded by their lawyer and a few supporters, but they looked small, defeated. Exactly how they'd made me feel for years. Diane caught my eye. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she looked away. I felt nothing. No triumph. No sadness. Just emptiness where a mother's love should have been. The district attorney did file charges. Felony insurance fraud, forgery, theft. Diane pleaded guilty to avoid trial, accepting a sentence of 18 months in a minimum security facility and 5 years probation. Roger wasn't charged criminally. He'd benefited from the theft, but hadn't participated in the forgery. But the civil judgment stood. They sold the Vale condo for $310,000, 10 months after buying it. Real estate fees and market changes meant they lost money on the deal. Good. They liquidated their savings, cashed out Roger's 401k, took out a second mortgage on their house. It took 4 months, but they paid every penny of the $565,000. Thomas deposited into an account he'd set up in my name. Trust account. Managed by a fiduciary I actually trusted. I sat in his office staring at the balance. $565,000. My inheritance, finally mine. What will you do with it? Thomas asked. I'd been thinking about that. First, pay off my student loans, $67,000. Then buy a house, something modest, but mine. Save the rest, invest it like my father would have wanted. Your father would be proud, Thomas said quietly. I hope so. I paused. Thomas, thank you for everything. You did the hard part, Natalie. I just helped. I walked out of his office into bolder sunshine. My phone rang. Mrs. Slett Calloway. I heard the money came through. Congratulations, dear. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. Nonsense. You did this yourself. I just opened my big mouth at the right time. We both laughed. I didn't go to Diane's sentencing hearing. Thomas went on my behalf and reported back. She'd looked small in her orange jumpsuit, defeated. She'd made a statement to the judge, apologizing to me. Too little, too late, Thomas said. But she did seem genuinely remorseful. Good for her. I meant it. I was done carrying anger for her. Vanessa and Connor reached out after the sentencing. They wanted to meet for coffee. I agreed, curious. We met at a cafe on Pearl Street. Vanessa looked tired. Our dad's a mess, she said. The second mortgage is killing him. Mom's in prison. Their marriage is falling apart. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Not your fault, Connor said. This is on them. They made their choices. We wanted you to know, Vanessa continued, that we don't blame you. What they did was wrong. We should have questioned it sooner. Thank you. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was acknowledgement. That was enough. I used $215,000 to buy a small house in North Boulder, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a yard with a big oak tree. It needed work, but it was mine. Truly, completely mine. I spent weekends painting walls, planting flowers, making it home. Mrs. Calloway came over often, bringing cookies and advice. Your father would love this place, she said one Saturday afternoon as we sat on the porch. He always said a person needed a home of their own, somewhere to build a life. I wish he could see it. I think he can. She smiled, and I think he's very proud. 6 months after the judgment, I got a letter from Diane. It was forwarded through Thomas's office. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain. Dear Natalie, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. What I did was unforgivable. I stole from you. I lied to you. I betrayed your father's trust and yours. I've spent 6 months in here thinking about why I did it. The truth is, I was scared. After your father died, I was terrified of being alone, of not having enough money. Roger promised security, and I grabbed onto that without thinking about what I was sacrificing. You. I sacrificed you. I'm so sorry. You deserve better. Your father deserved better. I don't know if you'll ever speak to me again. I don't know if I deserve that chance, but I want you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday I'd be ready to have a conversation. But not today. Today, I was focused on building my life, on honoring my father's memory by living well. A year after the lawsuit settled, I was promoted at work. Marketing manager, significant raise, benefits that actually covered therapy. I'd been seeing a counselor since the trial ended. Dr. Sarah Morrison, band name. Dr. Sarah Fletcher. She helped me process the trauma, the betrayal, the complicated grief of losing both my father and my mother. You're allowed to mourn the mother you thought you had, she told me, even if that person never really existed. It helped. Slowly, painfully, it helped. I started dating someone. His name was Alex, and he was kind, patient. He didn't push when I talked about my family, didn't judge when I explained why I didn't speak to my mother. That must have been hard, was all he said. Simple. Compassionate. Perfect. Mrs. Calloway turned 75, and I threw her a birthday party in my backyard. Neighbors came, people who'd known my father, people who'd supported me through the trial. It felt like community. Like family. The kind you choose. Vanessa and Connor came too. We'd been slowly rebuilding a relationship, separate from our parents. They were good people who'd been fed lies. I couldn't blame them for believing. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine. My house, my yard, my life, built on the foundation my father had tried to give me, finally realized. I thought about calling Diane. She'd been released from prison 2 months earlier, was living in a small apartment on the other side of Boulder. But I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. And that was okay. 2 years after the trial, I received a call from Thomas. Natalie, I have some news. Diane has filed for divorce from Roger. Oh, I didn't know how to feel about that. She wanted me to tell you. She didn't want you to hear it from someone else. That's considerate of her. Thomas was quiet for a moment. She also wanted me to ask if you'd be willing to meet. No pressure, no expectations, just coffee if you're open to it. I thought about it for a long time. Tell her I'll think about it. 3 months later, I agreed. We met at a neutral cafe, somewhere neither of us had history. Diane looked older. Prison had aged her, or maybe it was just the weight of consequences. We sat across from each other, coffee growing cold between us. Thank you for coming, she said. I wasn't sure I would. I understand. Silence stretched between us. Then she spoke again. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I've spent the last 2 years understanding what I did, really understanding it. And I'm horrified at myself, at what I was willing to do. She looked down at her hands. Your father trusted me. You trusted me, and I destroyed that for money and security that weren't even real. No, they weren't. I know that now. She took a shaky breath. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand why I made those choices, why I chose a man I'd known for 3 years over the daughter I'd raised for 26. Have you figured it out? Some of it. Fear, mostly, and selfishness. I wanted to be taken care of. I didn't want to face being alone. She met my eyes. But that's not an excuse. It's just an explanation. I nodded slowly. What do you want from me, Diane? Nothing. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, and that I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I left that coffee shop without making any promises, but I didn't close the door completely either. Over the next year, Diane and I had occasional careful conversations, emails mostly, brief, polite updates about our lives. She got a job at a nonprofit. I got engaged to Alex. She asked if she could come to the wedding. I said maybe. I meant it. Mrs. Calloway passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was 77. I spoke at her funeral, talking about how she'd been my guardian angel, how she'd seen what no one else would acknowledge and had the courage to tell me the truth. She saved me, I told the gathered mourners. Not because she had to, but because she thought it was right. That's who Mrs. Calloway was. I inherited her house. She'd left it to me in her will, much to her own children's surprise. Natalie was more family to me these last years than anyone, her will stated. She deserves a legacy from someone who actually loved her. I rented it out, using the income to start a small foundation. The Andrew Hayes Memorial Scholarship, for students who'd lost a parent and were struggling with educational costs. It felt right. Taking the pain and turning it into something good. 3 years after the trial, I stood in my backyard watching Alex play with our golden retriever. My house, my life, my choices, all of it built on the foundation my father had tried to leave me, nearly stolen, but ultimately reclaimed. Diane sent a card on my 30th birthday. I'm proud of you. I don't deserve to say that, but it's true. Dad would be proud too. I'm sorry I almost took that from you. I put the card in the drawer with her letter from prison. Maybe someday I'd forgive her. Maybe I wouldn't. But I didn't need her forgiveness or her approval anymore. I had something better. Myself, whole and free, standing on ground I'd fought for and won. That was enough. That was everything.